Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm at one of my work sites today, so I thought I'd take the opportunity to show you what I'm working with when I'm not shooting for YouTube. And also another thing, a couple of times when I've been shooting at home in my workshop, people have been asking me about my workbench. And as it happens, I brought it. It's here in the back of my van. So I'm gonna put it up inside of the house where I'm currently working, so you can see how it's put together and how I built it. I hope you'll find it interesting. Let's go inside then. It's a small house or cottage, typically Swedish. It's from the late 17th century, most of it. We're not sure if it was all built at the same time. And what I'm doing here is that I'm renovating the kitchen for them. So I've done the floor, which is now covered in plastic since they have been painting the walls and the ceiling. They're also fixed for them. Put up some more insulation. The insulation layer under the floor was terrible actually, so we had to rip it all out and redo it from start. And they wanted me to build the kitchen cabinets from scratch, from solid wood, not with those IKEA boxes or prefabricated stuff that you just put nice fronts on. But I built it all from scratch, and now the client is painting it. That's a good way to save money on the renovation project. There are the fronts for the cabinets. So I'm gonna fit the brass fittings and the hinges today that I chose. And here by the window is a nice place to work, so I'm gonna put the workbench here. Every workbench consists of a base and a top. I brought the base in first, which is logical. 2 pairs of legs and a couple of rails that connect them together close to the floor. The way I build things, I always mark all parts that can be taken apart and reassembled. This workbench is no exception to that rule. That's number 4 on that joint. This one is marked with the number 1. Here's number 2, here's number 3, number 4. I don't know why I did it in an anti-clockwise circle. It just ended up like that. Now the rails go into these mortises, the second set of legs. I built the base from regular construction lumber. So it's 2 by 4.5 inch material. If you want to try and make a workbench yourself, I suggest you build the base from something a little bit heavier. 3 or 4 inches would not have been too much, and it will become obvious why in a minute. Here's a box with all the small parts for the bench. Some of them are required for assembly, and some of them are just tools for working on the bench. Like these ones, for instance. They are straight oak cut-offs from my workshop. I use them for planing as winding sticks. That's a planing stop. That's for the bench. Some scrap wood to protect the workpiece when I'm clamping, usually using these holdfasts. They're made out of steel, so you don't want them to make dents in your workpiece. So then I just use scrap pieces of wood underneath. What was I looking for? Oh yeah, these 4 wedges. They're the same size, so they don't have to be marked in any way. They can go anywhere. There's one for each joint of the base. These are also made of oak. And this is where you can spot the problem with making the base from 2 slender materials. When the tenon comes through the mortise in this 2-inch wide leg, there's not really a lot of room left to make a mortise in the tenon for the wedge. So this became very thin. It has held up great these couple of years I've been using it, but I would have preferred to more or less double the width of the leg if I would have done it again. So I could have a thicker tenon and a thicker wedge, leaving me more material on the side of this mortise. The mortise in the leg I'm not worried about, but when it comes to the tenon it became really thin. So it was a little bit risky cutting that mortise. But I made it work on all 4 tenons, so it's alright. But I don't recommend doing it like this. So if you want to build a bench for yourself, make sure to use pretty heavy stock for the base, so you get really fat legs to start with. I always seem to forget about this. That's where the front vise goes in the mortise here. And I can't fit it here when this is put together because it gets too tight with this angle. And this piece has to go in advance as well. We'll soon see what this is. So to fit this piece that holds the screw for the vise into the base, this tenon or half tenon in the bottom of this piece has to go into this half mortise in the rail, like that. And when that's in place, I can push the legs onto the tenon again. And now this tenon goes through this mortise here. And this down here is a guide rail for the vise. It has a ratchet function that will keep this perpendicular to the bench. And that has a different size wedge to keep it in place, which I have here. It goes in like that. I also have a platform that I put inside of the base. That's optional, you don't need this really, but I find it handy to put tools on it, and you can also add extra weight onto it to keep the workbench steady. Which can be very useful if you bring it onto site as I did today. You can use water jugs. They are easy to transport. Just fill them with water on site and put them here, then it will stay where it's supposed to. If you have it in your workshop at home, you can always bolt it to the floor and walls if it's unsteady, but it's a good trick to use if you bring it out to site like this. I just use it to store tools on. But yeah, as I said, it's an option. And this is the heaviest part of the bench. And you want some weight in the top so it doesn't flex, and you can work properly on it with the mallets and chisels, and also to keep the bench from moving. But as I said, it would be useful to make the base slightly heavier than I did. I didn't hold back on the top though, that's for sure. This top is made entirely from 2x4s, so it is actually 4 inches thick, which is on the heavier side. I think most Workbench tops tend to be like 3 inches or even 2. But I wanted a nice sturdy top that would withstand some hard work. Let's take a look at how it fits onto the base, shall we? These series of holes are for the bench dogs, but there's an extra one there, and that corresponds to this peg. So when I tip it down, the peg will go into that hole and keep the top from moving, but I'm not totally relying on that. So I also put a little block of wood here that goes on the inside of this corner to keep it steady on this end. And here you can see where I fit the back vise. I just chiseled out a big hollow square. The actual jaws of the vise, they are made of oak. I would have preferred beech. That's also hardwood but slightly softer than oak, because oak is so hard it can tend to dent your workpiece. But I had oak, I didn't have any beech. It's a lot more durable than the rest of the wood, because this is just construction grade pine. But that's nice. It's cheap, and if you choose it carefully, it stays straight and it's soft, so you don't have to worry about damaging your workpiece when you drop it on top of it or something. I've seen a lot of fancy workbench builds where people use really nice hardwoods and they oil and wax the surface, so they get a better finish on those and better materials than on the dining room table. I think that's not a practical way to go about it when you build a workbench. It's better to use cheap wood that you don't have to worry about so much, and just get on with your work on top of it and don't romanticize too much about it. But when it comes to the jaws and the vices there, you can give it an extra thought or two on what sort of wood you would use there. And sure, if I had any beech or birch laying around, I would use that, but no, I ended up using oak. So that's what I have there. And on this side it's a similar principle. Here's the wooden peg that will go into that hole. I just marked a square around those holes with a pencil, so I know what hole to aim for when I assemble it, so I don't put the peg in a dog hole by accident. And I have the block of wood here that goes in the corner here, and to keep this mounting piece for the front vise steady, I actually have a protruding bit on the back side of that with a half tenon that comes up and goes into a half mortise here, so that will keep this from rocking. Yeah, that's a hole for the plane stop. I'll show you that later. Alright, that's it. So there are no screws or anything, it's just kept in place with the help of its own weight, which is plenty enough, I can tell you. So let's flip it down and put it in place. The top's in place, but there's something missing here in the back. Here's the missing piece, a tool tray. And this is kept in place with these, and they protrude on the bottom here, so they will hook in underneath the top, and that will secure it really well. And it's also easy to lift it out if you want to clean it. There you go. That's that in place. I made some slanted pieces on the ends so I can swipe dust and shavings out of it easily. And I know not everybody likes the idea of a tool tray because they think it collects dust and shavings and it has to be cleaned all the time. Yeah, sure, that's true. If you find that a problem, don't build a tool tray if you make your own bench. I wanted it because I tend to keep a lot of tools where I work. If I put them down here, I can still place large work pieces across here, because this back wall here is at the same height as the worktop, so I can place long work pieces or wide work pieces all across the bench and support them at the back here as well. And I find that handy. And I can have lots of tools for the bench in here. Sure, it gets a bit cluttered and dusty, but well, you need to clean your workshop every once in a while anyway, so yeah. But you do as you choose if you want to build a workbench. If you don't like tool trays, don't build a tool tray. And here's the planing stop. It's a good thing to have. It disappears in the top when you don't want to use it. When you want to put the board here and plane it, you can just push it up. I have to adjust this. When I just made it, it had such a snug fit that I can push it up and it stayed there. But over the years it's shrunk a little bit, so I'm gonna add some sort of spring to it. So it stays up and then I can just push it down. Very good thing to have. You can buy these metal plates with teeth on them. So I just made mine myself from a piece of steel I had in the forge. No big deal. The ratchet system for the front vise then. The rail down here has a strip of steel inserted in it with teeth. Here's a little lever that acts as a stop, so this rail won't slide in again when you tighten the vise. Right now it's up, so the ratchet rail is disconnected. Wind it in because it's very far out right now. And the main idea with this rail down here with the ratchet system is to keep this entire leg vise perpendicular to the front of the workbench when you tighten it. So say you have something you want to clamp in here, then you just let that down, and now you will hear the sound from the metal teeth when it comes out. And when you start clamping it now, you get even pressure up here because it stops down here. Otherwise the bottom part of the leg would just be pushed in, but now it can't, since it stops down here with the help of the ratchet system. This entire leg is made of oak also, as well as the piece that mounts it to the base of the bench. I'm gonna wind it out further so you can hear the sound of the ratchet thing a little bit more. When you wanna wind it in, you just lift and then the rail runs smoothly, freely inside of the base. There are different ways to make this work, but this is my solution. This is how I made it. This is the last piece of the workbench, and this is called a sliding deadman. And that's to be used with holdfasts when you clamp workpieces on the front of your bench, which you sometimes do. Cabinet door that you want to plane the edge of, that you need to support here so you can get to the edge up here. So it rides back and forth on the rail and holds a hold fast anywhere you need it. If I have that door, say, I usually just use the front vise to clamp one part of it and the other one somewhere down here. I just give it a smack with a mallet and then it's held fast on this side as well. That's very helpful. Or if you want plain long stuff that you also put in the front vise that runs all the way, long beams or the edge of boards, you can also use this. Put it a bit higher and then you clamp it onto the side of the top like that. I have dog holes in this leg as well, so I can use them too. And this is also where I usually store my hold fasts when I'm not using them. So then I know where they are at all times. And then of course I have some bench dogs. I made two types of bench dogs. Short, stumpy ones. But the ones I use almost all the time are these ones. They have a piece of steel wire drilled into the bottom, bent in a groove along the side and then put into a little hole up here. I got this idea from Paul Sellers. He makes these. He uses piano wire. I just had some sort of steel wire. I don't know what it is actually. It flexes, springs a little bit. That's what you want. If you want to see a detailed description on how to make these, I suggest you look up Paul Sellers' YouTube channel. So they fit nicely in the dog holes. You can clamp your workpiece with the help of the vise. When you don't want them but need them in place, you just push them down and then you can easily push them up again. So they are held in place with this little spring thing. It doesn't take much really. And then these ones, they just sit on their shoulder like that. They are shorter because not all of these dog holes go all the way through the top, because the vise mechanism is in the way underneath here. So in these holes I have to use them if I want to clamp something here. That's part of the reason I made them. And they also have a wider clamping area compared to these ones. That's also an advantage sometimes, but for the most part I just use these for everything. The overall design of the workbench is pretty much based on the Moravian style workbench, of which I have seen a couple online, and there is also an old one from the 17th century, I believe, in a museum somewhere in the United States. But I made some alterations to it. For starters, the front vise on the original Moravian one is straight down. I angled mine to get more space really to clamp tall stuff with a good amount of clamping up here, not having to worry where the screw mechanism is. Because on those original ones this vise isn't this wide and the clamping area is situated right on top of the screw, so you can't really put an entire door against the side of the bench and clamp it with this. So that's why I built this to an angle. That also gave him the opportunity to angle the legs, or maybe they are angled on the original bench, I can't remember now. But it has an advantage to do that with the legs, because that makes the base more stable, so the bench is less likely to rock back and forth when you do heavy planing on it. I don't think the original has a slide deadman. I don't think it has a back vise. So that's inspired from other styles of workbenches. I grew up with the Swedish type of workbench, so they always have a back vise, but not exactly designed like that one. But I I did want a sturdy back vise, so I built that in as well. It's not that long. It's 180 centimeters, which is 71 inches. The top itself is 40 centimeters or 16 inches. With the tray included, it's almost 60 centimeters, which is 23 inches. For a stationary workbench, for the workshop, it would be nice if it was longer, but I wanted this to be sort of portable so I could bring it out to my work sites. It's 36 inches tall, which is just over 90 centimeters. And the height you have to adapt, so you have a comfortable height when you use your planes. This is actually a little bit too high for me, but I don't always plane on it. I do lots of other work as well, and then it's not comfortable to have a bench that's too low. What I do sometimes is that I just stand on a platform, so I get up a couple of inches. Older workbenches are usually a bit lower, and you can see people putting them on top of blocks to get them up a little bit, because nowadays we are a bit taller in general than people were about 100 years ago. But anyway, that's the measurements for my bench. So there you go. I hope that was a pretty thorough demonstration of this workbench. I hope it answered most of the questions you might have about it, and preferably it inspired you to build your own if you haven't already done so. And if you have, well, you can always make another one. You always need a couple of workbenches, right? I'm actually thinking about building a larger one at home and using this on site like this, or perhaps building a slightly lighter one, because this top is really heavy to haul around. I don't know, but I'd also like to try out a few other ideas that I haven't incorporated in this bench. We'll see what happens. But if you liked the video, just drop a comment, tell me about it. I'll try to answer any questions if you have any. And press like and subscribe to the channel by all means if you haven't already done so. And I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, take care.